She walked into the store like anyone else, calm, confident, and unaware of the storm about to erupt. The shelves were ordinary, and the people around her moved without notice. Yet in just moments, everything would shift. Security eyes narrowed. Whispers turned into suspicion, and suddenly, the weight of centuries-old bias pressed down on her shoulders. Without warning, she found herself cornered, accused, and treated like a criminal for something she hadn't done. Shoppers stopped and stared, some shaking their heads, others watching in silence. To them, it was just another scene. But to her, it was a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. She wasn't just any woman. Her life, her career, her sacrifices, all of it stood in direct contrast to the judgment being forced on her. Still, none of that mattered in this moment. What mattered was how quickly respect turned to humiliation, how authority was stripped away by prejudice. And the truth? What happened next would not only shock everyone in that store, it would reveal a painful reality about justice, identity, and the danger of assumptions. Would you have seen it coming? It was supposed to be just another Saturday, the kind of day where the hours pass quietly without any surprises. For Captain Renee Johnson, life outside the badge was simple. She valued those rare moments of normalcy. She was a daughter, a sister, and a neighbor, and though her work demanded strength and resilience, she still carried herself with a warmth that drew people in. That afternoon, Renee had decided to stop by a local store. She wasn't in uniform, wasn't on duty. She was simply herself, a woman off the clock picking up a few things before heading home. She walked through the aisles with the same calm focus she carried into every part of her life, her mind halfway between grocery lists and tomorrow's plans. To the people passing by, she was just another customer. Ordinary, unremarkable. But beneath the surface, there was something else. Unseen, like a shadow waiting at the edge of the day. For all her years of service, for all the lives she had sworn to protect, there was one thing she could never shield herself from: the weight of perception. The invisible judgment that clung to her skin before she ever said a word. Shoppers moved around her, carts squeaking on the polished floor, music humming faintly overhead. It felt safe, familiar, and yet without warning, that safety was about to fracture. Eyes would narrow, doubt would sharpen, and suddenly, the very world Renee had sworn to uphold would turn against her. The truth was simple. She was just buying a few things. But in a matter of minutes, a quiet errand would unravel into something much larger, a public test of dignity and justice, and the painful reminder that even those who wear the badge are not protected. From the prejudice that runs deeper than uniforms, she didn't know it yet. But the moment she walked toward the checkout line, her life was about to be reduced to suspicion. And the question waiting ahead wasn't whether she'd pay for her items. It was whether anyone would see her for who she truly was. Renee moved steadily through the aisles, unaware that her quiet errand was about to become anything but ordinary. She placed a few items in her basket: bread, milk, toiletries, the kind of things no one notices. But as she made her way toward the checkout line, she felt it, that subtle shift in energy. The kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck rise before your mind can even explain why. At first, it was nothing more than a glance. A store employee paused, eyes lingering too long. Then another. Soon the casual buzz of the store seemed to change. Conversations quieted as she passed. Heads tilted. A woman clutched her purse just a little closer. Renee had seen these signals before, not as a shopper, but as an officer responding to calls where assumptions were already made. Only now she wasn't the one in uniform. She was the target. The footsteps came next, slow, heavy, deliberate. She could feel them behind her, following her from one aisle to the next. She stopped to look at the shelves, pretending to compare prices. The steps stopped too. When she moved again, so did they. By the third aisle, she no longer wondered. She knew. She was being watched. At the end of the aisle, two men appeared, store security. Their eyes locked on her basket, then on her. They whispered something she couldn't hear. One of them nodded, and just like that, the unspoken judgment settled in. She wasn't a customer anymore. She was a suspect. Her chest tightened, but she pushed forward, forcing her steps to remain steady. She had nothing to hide. Still, the weight of those stares pressed harder with every movement. She reached the checkout line, setting her basket down with deliberate calm. The cashier's smile faltered, replaced by a nervous glance at the guards who had now positioned themselves closer. Then it happened. A voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." Every head in the checkout area turned. The room shrank around her. Heat rose in her chest, but her face remained composed. She asked what the problem was, though she already knew the answer. They accused her of slipping items into her bag, of trying to leave without paying. The words struck like a blow. For a moment, it didn't matter that she was a captain, that she had worn the badge for years, or that she had devoted her life to protecting the very community now staring at her in judgment. In this moment, she was reduced to one thing: the color of her skin and the suspicion it carried. Shoppers whispered. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others simply watched, waiting to see what would happen next. Renee's heart pounded, not from guilt, but from anger, from humiliation, from the raw injustice of standing accused in a place where she had done nothing wrong. The guards didn't ask. They demanded. They reached for her arm, as if she had no right to question their authority. The cashier stepped back, uncomfortable but silent. Renee's instincts screamed at her to defend herself, to pull away, to speak her truth. But another part of her knew. The wrong move here could change everything. So she stood still, breathing deep, fighting to keep her voice steady. She asked again what they believed she had taken. The answer didn't matter. They were already convinced, and in that conviction the scene around her grew more intense. A child clung to his mother's hand, eyes wide. A man shook his head and muttered under his breath. One by one, people began recording on their phones. The humiliation cut deep. She wasn't just being accused. She was being paraded, judged not in a courtroom but in a checkout line. And the evidence against her? Nothing more than suspicion wrapped in prejudice. As they ordered her to step aside, she realized this moment wasn't just about her reputation. It wasn't about the embarrassment. It was about something much bigger. Because if this could happen to her, someone who had sworn to serve and protect, what did it mean for those with no badge, no title, no defense? Her pulse raced. Her hands trembled, though she hid them at her sides. Every instinct told her this wasn't going to end easily. And in the corner of her mind, a chilling thought pressed in. Would anyone believe her when she spoke the truth? The guards reached again, this time more forcefully. And just as they did, Renee knew this wasn't going to stay quiet. This moment would either end in silence or it would erupt into something bigger. Something that none of them could take back. And with the crowd watching, cameras rolling, and judgment heavy in the air, the stage was set. The question wasn't whether she was innocent. It was whether anyone cared enough to see it. The air in the store felt heavy, like the walls themselves were closing in. Renee stood surrounded, her every breath measured, her every movement under a microscope. The guards' hands gripped tighter on her arm, their voices rising, their tone shifting from suspicion to accusation. They weren't asking anymore. They were declaring she was guilty. Her heart pounded, not from fear of theft, because she had stolen nothing, but from the terrifying realization that in this moment, her truth didn't matter. The badge she carried, the years of service, the lives she had risked her own for, all of it disappeared under the crushing weight of prejudice. The crowd swelled. Cameras hovered, recording every second. Some voices murmured in outrage, others whispered disbelief, but no one stepped forward. She felt the sting of humiliation, the raw injustice of being stripped down to nothing more than a stereotype. Then came the final blow. "Turn around! Hands behind your back!" The words echoed like a thunderclap. In that instant, Time slowed. The metal cuffs glinted under the fluorescent lights, a symbol not of justice, but of betrayal. They grabbed her wrists, cold steel pressed against her skin. Her chest tightened, her breath shallow. She wasn't just being restrained, she was being erased. Her identity, her authority, her dignity, all swallowed by the assumption that her skin defined her worth. The crowd gasped as the cuffs locked. A child cried. Someone shouted, "She didn't do anything!" But the guards didn't listen. Their focus was fixed, their decision already made, and with every click of the cuffs, Renee felt years of sacrifice crumble to dust. Her mind raced. Should she speak? Should she reveal who she was? The irony cut deep. The very badge she carried could silence them in an instant. Yet the bitter truth burnt brighter. Why should she need to? Why should her humanity require proof? Tears threatened, but she swallowed them down. She refused to let them see her break. Still, the shame was suffocating. Her life, her career, her name, all hanging in the balance defined by one moment of injustice. The cameras zoomed closer. Phones captured every angle, and for the first time, she realized the power wasn't in her hands anymore. The story unfolding wasn't just hers. It was a reflection of something much larger, something that had played out countless times before and would continue, unless someone chose to see the truth. The cuffs tightened. The guards prepared to march her out, and in that moment a single thought seared through her mind. Will anyone believe me? Or will this be the moment I'm remembered not for who I am, but for what they assumed me to be? The sound of the cuffs still echoed in Renee's ears as the crowd stirred with unease. And then it happened. Someone in the back gasped. Another voice shouted, "She's a cop! That's Captain Johnson!" The words cut through the noise like a blade. The guards froze, their grip faltering. The murmurs turned into a wave of disbelief. Phones tilted upward, zooming in on her face. Recognition spread across the room like wildfire. Renee stood tall, her wrists still bound, her eyes locked on the men who had accused her. She didn't need to say a word, the truth had spoken for itself. The guards, suddenly pale, scrambled to undo what they had done, fumbling with the keys, muttering apologies. But the damage was done. The humiliation, the fear, the betrayal, it couldn't be erased by a hurried excuse. The cuffs clicked open, but the sting remained. In that moment, Renee realized the cruel irony. The same badge that could free her now had not shielded her from being seen as guilty first. Her authority only mattered once it was too late. She gathered her things in silence. The crowd shifted, some avoiding her gaze, others nodding in quiet respect, but none of them could undo what she had endured. As she walked out of the store, the cameras still rolling, one truth burnt in her chest. This wasn't just about her, this was about every black woman who had been followed through a store, every man pulled over for fitting a description, and every child taught to keep their hands visible, to speak politely, and to survive encounters that others would never fear. Renee had lived through it in and out of uniform. And now her story was another piece of evidence in a truth America has tried again and again to ignore, that the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was built. To assume, to accuse, to strip away dignity before granting humanity. The weight of that reality followed her long after she left the store. She thought of her fellow officers, good men and women who believed in justice. She thought of her community who looked to her for protection. And she thought of the child in the store, the one who had cried as the cuffs closed. What lesson had that child carried home? That innocence doesn't matter. That safety is conditional. That worth is questioned before it is believed. Renee's humiliation would fade, but the memory would never leave her. And the truth? She wasn't alone. Every day, in towns and cities across the country, stories like hers unfold without cameras, without witnesses, without resolution. Lives scarred, dignity stolen, futures shaped by the quiet violence of suspicion. So, what do we do with this story? Do we shake our heads, sigh, and scroll to the next? Or do we face it, really face it, and ask ourselves what it says about the world we live in? Because this isn't just about one captain in one store. It's about the countless names we never hear, the moments that never go viral, and the truths buried beneath silence. Renee walked out that day with her head high but with a heaviness that no apology could lift. And as she stepped into the world again, one question lingered. Not for her, but for all of us. How many more times must dignity be stolen before justice is seen? How many more stories like this before we finally say, enough? The answer isn't in her hands, it's in ours.